Well, good morning, everyone. I call this virtual meeting of Heritage Oakville to order. And for many of us on the committee, this is deja vu all over again. But I will remind you and remind myself of some of the protocols that apply for this type of online meeting. Members of the public may be watching us through the live stream at oakville.ca, and they will be able to access the agenda if they go to the town website, and they can download the agenda and see what it is that we're looking at. If each of you would mute yourself, Sue, you're not muted. If everybody could mute themselves during the course of the meeting, and then when they do wish to speak, when the opportunity arises, if they would wave their hands, bang the drum, shake the screen, otherwise unmute themselves and shout, then I'll do my best to recognize them and invite you then to unmute yourself, give us your contribution, and then mute yourself again. Okay, there will be delegates today, and they too will be virtual, and both of them have already registered, but we can take walk-on delegations. So if anyone is watching who is excited enough about any item on the agenda that they wish to contribute to the discussion, they should call 905-815-6095, and Andrea will direct them how to enter the meeting. All delegates have 10 minutes in which to speak. We have 3 discussion items today and 2 information items, and I would remind everyone that this is an advisory committee, and any recommendations we make to Council will go to Planning and Development Council on March the 4th at 6:30. It too will be virtual, so anyone wishing to delegate, if they're listening online at the moment, should register with the clerk probably by noon on Friday, but walk-on delegations will still be taken at the Planning and Development meeting. So, do we have any regrets today, Madam Clerk?
We do, Mr. Chair. Jason Judson.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to anything before us today? Oh, seeing none. The next item of business is the confirmation of the minutes of our previous meeting. These were circulated. Are there any comments? Would somebody like to give me a motion to approve these? Thank you, Brenda. Brenda has moved that the minutes be approved as circulated. Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. So our first discussion item today is a heritage permit application with respect to 27 Reynolds, and I think that's Carolyn. So Carolyn will walk us through that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wait for the presentation to come up. Perfect. So this is our first item for a heritage permit application for 27 Reynolds Street. Next slide, please. And it's located in the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District. You can see it there just almost at the end of Reynolds Street. It has 2 accesses. The house fronts onto Reynolds Street, but the garage is accessed by King Street. Next slide, please. So the property contains a circa 1943 1.5-story shingle-clad house. It was designed by a local architect, William Gould Armstrong. It's considered to be a contributing property in the Heritage Conservation District, but it does include some rear wings that were built later, mostly in 1989, and that's the area today that's of concern, where the application is being proposed to construct a 2nd-story addition over an existing 1-story rear wing that was built in 1989. So no changes being proposed to the Heritage House itself on Reynolds Street. The other piece of this is to construct a new staircase that connects the existing 1st story to the new 2nd story. And there was a minor variance approved by the Committee of Adjustment for this, for a maximum residential floor area of 34.2%, whereas a maximum of 30% is permitted. This was supported by planning staff and by the committee, as it wasn't considered to be a significant change. The footprint of the building remains relatively the same, and that additional space is not really have impact on the surrounding neighborhood properties, as it is already an existing balcony on that point. So this point is really changing it from an open balcony to an enclosed sunroom. Next slide, please. Here's the existing wing. again, so you can see the first story, which will remain relatively the same as you see there today. And the second story balcony will become an enclosed section with a new roof and new windows. Next slide. So this is the site plan, again, the darker shaded section at the back of the house where it says proposed addition. Again, that footprint is relatively already there. It's just being constructed on top. No changes to the remainder of the buildings or property. Next slide. Here's a roof plan showing how the roof is going to be integrated into the existing gable roofs. Next slide. And then this is looking from on the south elevation. So you can see that there is the existing one story, which remains the same, and the second story with new 6/6 wood windows. The idea was to continue with the look of multi-pane wood windows in the house without replicating the windows pane divisions on the original portion of the house, which is 8/12 and 8/16, or 8/12. So the roof line you can see is almost sort of a small turret, but the roof is actually lower than the roof line of the Heritage House at the front. And again, it's quite separated from the Heritage House with the later modern addition between this portion and the original house anyway. Next slide. This is from the rear, so this is looking west. Again, the portion on the bottom is already there, it's existing, but on the right-hand side of the first story, you can see this is where the footprint is extended a little bit just to accommodate that new staircase. Next slide. And this is looking south towards the lake. And again, you can just see how the roof is integrated into the rest of the house, and the existing door there remains on the first story. Next slide. And this is just a view from the front, which shows no changes. Next slide. So in terms of our assessment, of course, we use the Old Oakville district and we looked at the block analysis, and this is more information and details as provided in this in your agenda. But generally speaking, the staff found the scale and height to be compatible with the house and with the surrounding district. Again, the addition is lower in height than the heritage structure. It's not very visible from the street, from either King Street or Reynolds Street. Again, it's already a balcony that's open there, so it is really quite tucked in behind the Heritage House. The aesthetic is traditional. The materials are continuing the wood shingles and the multi-pane wood windows, but they've been detailed in a way that's somewhat distinguishable from the Heritage House at the front. And again, no changes to the historic house itself. Next slide. The staff recommendation is therefore to recommend approve the application, but there is the condition that final details on the windows, doors, trim, cladding, and paint colors be submitted to for final approval to staff. And again, that the heritage permit expire 2 years from approval by council. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I believe we have a delegate on this one as well.
Thank you, Carolyn. Does anyone have any questions to ask of Carolyn? And this is where it gets tricky, because I'm looking at all the faces are on a strip on the side of the screen. No one is raising their hand? Nope. Okay. Now we do have Terry Martino. Terry, I believe that you're available for questions. I can see you now. Thank you, Terry. Do you want to add anything to Carolyn's presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Good to see everybody again. Thank you to Carolyn for a comprehensive presentation. I don't really have anything to add to Carolyn's presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the members may have.
Good, thank you. Are there any questions of Terry? No? Good, thank you. Okay. Is there anyone who is watching who has dialed in at 905-815-6095 who wishes to say anything? Nobody there, Andrea or Natasha?
No, we have no one.
No one there. Okay, good. So we're confined to the board now. Any discussion on this application? Jenny, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd say that this is a beautifully executed addition. I mentioned these comments before. It's well proportioned. The integrity of the house has been preserved on the front facade facing Reynolds Street, and there appear to be no negative effects on the neighbors as this is an L-shaped lot. I noticed that the second story addition on the rear was dropped previous to the previous presentation, and I think it is cleverly undertaken with a drop in the roof ridge between the existing and the new. So it's a lovely addition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, would somebody like to give me a motion? Brenda, that's a motion to approve the staff recommendation. So Brenda has made that motion. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried and we recommend to council the approval of the application. Thank you, Terry, for adapting so quickly to the new order, but we've all done this before. So thank you very much indeed for your presence this morning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and enjoy the beautiful day.
Yes, until it starts to rain, I believe.
Exactly.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 4.2, which is a notice of intention to demolish at 530 Carson Lane. And I think that's Susan. Thank you, Susan. Off you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So we have our presentation coming up here, and I will take you through the notice of intention to demolish for 530 Carson Lane. Next slide, please. So the property is located on the south side of Carson Lane in between Chartwell Road and Howard Avenue. It is generally part of a historic area of the town referred to as Orchard Beach or Orchard Park. Next slide, please. The property was added to the Heritage Register as a listed non-designated property when we did our large update in 2009. And at that time, its potential cultural heritage value or interest was recognized as being for the Cyrus W. Anderson House, a circa 1900 cottage-style residence. And so as part of the notice of intention to demolish, there is a cultural heritage evaluation report that has been completed by Heritage Consultants SMDA. That would be Rick Metelgen in association with several research associates. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do first is to take you through some of the building history in terms of the physicality of the structure. And so what originally was built onto the property is what you can see in the purple area that is identified as A. Section B is the second addition to the house, which essentially doubled the footprint and expanded and created that new entranceway on the front elevation. And then another addition that took place much later, and that is identified in the red areas marked with C. And so as far as we can tell, and the report does go into this quite a bit in terms of how the dates have been assigned to the properties, but portion A, the purple portion, is the original historic portion of the cottage circa 1900 or so. The addition in B, the report identifies as generally mid-century. It would be staff's assertion that this is probably around 1940s. And then the portions in red as part of the third main addition to the building was likely in either the 1980s or early 1990s. And so you can see both the front and the rear elevations on this slide. Next slide. And so these are the photographs that go with them so that you can see the upper photo is the front elevation. We've kind of, that's a look a little slightly in from the side as there is quite a lot of greenery around the front of the house. And so you can see that the main entrance there, which is part of the mid-century addition, and the remaining portion of the original 1900s cottage. And then you can see the rear and the lower photo, which is very much taken up by those 1980s additions of those bay windows. Next slide, please. So looking at the property, we've got here both the side elevations, east and west, but I think probably the most helpful is that aerial mapping where you can see A and B. So again, A, which is the purple, is the original portion. B is the mid-century portion in that light blue, and C is the 1980s additions of those bay windows, which are largely only seen at the back of the property. Next slide, please. So the Cultural Heritage Evaluation Report does provide a fairly thorough history of the property. While the historic plaque on the outside of the property refers to it as the Cyrus W. Anderson House, and he was likely the builder of the property, it is very unlikely that he ever actually occupied this residence. He was a well-known person in town and had a secondary residence not too far away from this one. And so it is our best assumption that this was likely a rental property for the first several decades of its existence. And then the first owner that we can attribute to actually having lived in the property is George C. Atkins. And there's a bit of information on George Atkins in the report. He's the publisher of the Oakville Record Star, which was one of Oakville's early weekly newspapers, and he was a longtime school board trustee. However, when you actually get through completing the assessment in terms of what does this property meet for Ontario Regulation 906, under design and physical value, really the cottage no longer meets the criteria required for designation due to the number of alterations that have been made to it. It really is no longer read as a 1900s era cottage. Staff have noted that we do believe that the criteria for association with George C. Atkins does meet the historical associative value criteria for the 1 point, the association with important or significant people, themes to a community. But it doesn't have any significant architects, builder designs, or theorists. And in terms of its contextual value, it is only loosely linked to the Orchard Beach development, given that it actually predates it. And this is an area that has been in flux for many years. My guess is 3 to 4 decades now. And it's seen a lot of turnover and new construction. And so the property is also not a landmark as well. Next slide, please. And so while staff certainly acknowledge that this is a lovely home, it doesn't meet 2 or more criteria of the Ontario Regulation 906, which defines what cultural heritage value is. And so therefore, our recommendation is that it be removed from the Heritage Register, but also that if there is any interest in salvage of either the 1900s or the mid-century elements of the building, that the property owners allow us that opportunity. I'm available to take any questions, Mr. Chair, and I am not sure if the Heritage Consultant, Mr. Meteljan, is with us today or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. As always, when we're confronted with this is a house that's on the list. And when somebody applies to take it off, we can do one of 2 things. And that is either accept that and the consequences that flow of it, or issue a notice of intent to designate. And it seems from your presentation that what staff is saying to us, that it doesn't meet the criteria for a Part 4 designation.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. The requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act are that a property has to meet 2 or more of the criteria of Ontario Regulation 906 in order to warrant designation under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. While staff believe that the property meets 1 criteria, it's not sufficient, unfortunately. And so our recommendation is that it be removed from the register when we do not move to designate the property.
Yeah, so 1 criterion is not enough. Okay, thank you, Sue. Welcome, Bob. I see you managed to get in. You missed the little bit of, I don't know if you saw it, maybe you were watching it, but the process now is that you keep yourself muted, unless you want to speak, in which case you attract my attention. And then when you do want to contribute, you unmute yourself and join the fray. Okay, so anyway, nice to see you. Now, Rick, I can see that a box with your name on it has appeared. Thank you for accommodating the remote virtual meeting today. Is there anything that you wish to add to Susan's presentation?
Thank you, Drew. No, nothing particularly. I think that her presentation was excellent. As I think I say in my report, the house is very charming. There's no question of that. But when you actually look at the criteria, and when you do an analysis on the basis of the criteria, my feeling is that it doesn't meet it, and that there really is no reason at that point to designate the building. So while it's unfortunate to see something that has been around, at least in part, for that long come down, in this case, I think that's the only option. So those would just be my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Are there any questions of Rick? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so is there anyone, Madam Secretary, who has indicated that they wish to participate online?
There
Madam
are none,
Secretary?
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, no, there's no one. Okay,
No.
good, thank you. So we're confined to the board then. Any discussion and comments from anyone? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say that I'm very saddened by the conclusion of the report, understanding all of the policy decisions and not really understanding the conclusion. I read the report, and it was a loving report on the house with all the attributes of the house, and it was like, as I had mentioned to Sue, it was like a big roller coaster ride, and suddenly coming to a full stop with whiplash when I read the conclusion. This property appears to be a quintessential, charming, modest, vernacular Oakville relic. It's a bit of a time capsule, if you will, and aesthetically the additions evolved seamlessly, so they all fit, and it looks charming. And you know, it's such a shame. It would be wonderful if the owners would be able to look at incorporating a further evolution of addition to accommodate a new lifestyle or more space. But I'm saddened to see this today.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other comments from anyone? No, I don't see any. So is somebody prepared to give me a motion? Councillor Gittings, and that would be a motion that the staff recommendation be approved.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. So we have the motion before us. Is there any further comment or discussion on the motion? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried, and I always feel this kind of situation that if I was a High Court judge, I'd take out the black cap and put it on my head, because it's a shame. It's probably something we're going to lose, but there's no way to stop it. Okay, thank you everybody for your contribution. The motion being carried, that order of business is closed. So the next item is the notice of intention to designate. This is a more positive spin now on the meeting. To designate multiple properties, and Carolyn is running that project currently for us. So Carolyn, off you go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do have 3 properties for you today to look at. We have 159 Balsam Drive, 2069 Lakeshore Road East, and 1099 6th Line. So this is the first look at for the committee. We are still working with the owners to look at final details to move towards positive designations. So it'll come before council at some point. But for now, we thought it'd be great for the Heritage Committee to take the first look at these 3 for designation. Next slide, please. 159 Balsam being the first one. This is the Thomas and Electa Leach House. Many of you probably quite familiar with it. It's always been painted this red color for quite a long time. It's sort of a familiar sight along Balsam Drive, which has a lot of more newer houses. And this is, of course, one of the oldest or the oldest on the street. Go to the next slide, please. And staff felt like it met the criteria for designation, firstly because of its design and physical value as a representative example of an 1830s neoclassical frame house. And of course, this age of this home makes it quite a rare and early example of its kind in Oakville, so quite a significant early building for the town. Secondly, it has historical and associative value. It is associated with the Leach family and the Wasp family. The Leach family was a very early settler family, and the Wasp family was also settled on these lands and had a farm, and both made significant contributions to the early development of the town. And in terms of its builder, it's also associated with the Leach family. They were the carpenters who built this house and other homes in the town at that time. Contextually, it's important in supporting the area as one that is defined by its transition from mid-19th century farmland to 20th century suburban development, and again remains one of the earlier homes on a street that has much newer homes along it now. And finally, it's physically, functionally, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. Next slide, please. Our second one is Dunhope Heath at 2069 Lakeshore Road East, located in southeast Oakville on the north side of Lakeshore Road. I'll go to the next slide. It is a representative example of a 1920s colonial revival style estate house. It has had different additions added to it, but we have not included those in the proposed designation. It would just be the original two-story brick colonial revival home. It also has historical and associative value for the theme of development of wealthy lakeshore estates in southeast Oakville. Of course, some of these have disappeared over the years, but this remains one of those original 1920s estates that was developed around that time in early 20th century in southeast Oakville. It's also associated with the Izzard family who built the house and who lived there for years. And finally, contextually, it's important in defining, supporting, and maintaining the character of the area that is defined by these large estate homes, and it's physically, functionally, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings and contributes to the understanding of this area of Oakville, which is defined again by its historically shore estates. Next slide, please. And our last one, so I've heard Louth and I've heard Luth. I'm still waiting on the presentation or the pronunciation on that. This is located on the northeast corner of 1099 6th Line and Leyland Avenue. And it is a older craftsman house from the 1920s. There is an older photograph here you can see in the bottom, and a lot of this house remains unchanged since it was constructed. Next slide, please. This one has design and physical value as a representative example of an early 20th century craftsman bungalow. And it's also associated with T.C. Hagman. He was a well-known local fruit farmer. He owned a lot of land along this area and built the house and had many tenants live in it over the years, starting with Leslie Luth, who was a local golf professional. He started as a tenant, but then his family ended up owning the home, and he worked at the Oakville Golf Club and was actually quite known nationally and internationally as a professional golfer. And finally, contextually, it's physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings and is an important anchor to the understanding of the development of the area from a former farmland to residential development over time. Next slide. So the staff recommendation is that a notice of intention to designate be issued under Part 4 of the Heritage Act for these properties, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Super. Thank you, Carolyn. Are there any questions of Carolyn? Switch to the large screen now. Any questions of Carolyn? I'm sure Councillor Giddings wants to know if everybody has come on board with respect to the proposal to designate these houses. So perhaps you could answer that question for him, Carolyn.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're still working with all the owners right now towards positive designation. So as I noted, there might be a few changes in terms of the heritage attributes and whatnot. Yes, everyone is aware that it's going to the Heritage Committee today, and we'll move forward to Council when we're ready with hopefully some positive designations that everyone's on board with. Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's 10 o'clock.
That's my computer telling me it's 10 o'clock, so that's pretty good timing. Madam Secretary, is there anyone has indicated that they want to speak to this?
There are none.
There are none. Okay, so we're confined to the board. Any discussion on Susan's report? Nope. Anyone prepared to give me a motion? Kerry, thank you. Kerry has given me a motion to approve the staff recommendation with respect to the designation of the multiple properties. Any further discussion on that motion? Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you. So the next item of business is information items. And we have 5.1, which is the Heritage Conservation District update, and that's Susan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So hopefully everybody on the committee received the email that I sent out last week. That the first draft of the new plan and guidelines is now available for review and comment on the project webpage. So that's on oakville.ca if you search for Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District. We've also announced that we're holding a public meeting, and of course, committee members are certainly welcome to attend, but we will be looking to schedule a stakeholder discussion with committee members also later on as part of this process. But the public meeting is March 21st. We'll be holding it at Knox Presbyterian Church downtown at 250 Lakeshore Road East, starting at 6:30 p.m. And so we're very pleased to have the first draft out. I'm busy marking away at my copy because as a draft, we know that there will be changes, and we look forward to receiving everybody's input. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, it was good to see that first draft. It looked good. I mean, there's obviously lots of discussion will take place, but it was great to see it on time. Are there any questions of Sue? We don't always take questions on information items, but this is one that somebody might want to ask something. No? Okay, good.
Councillor Giddings?
Oh, Councillor Giddings. Yes, I see you now. Thanks.
Thanks. No, just further to your comments, we've had a lot of positive feedback through to Councillor Janet and myself, and a lot of people looking forward to this. So I think it's going to be a good evening.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Good to hear. Okay, the next item is the designation project update, and I guess that would be Carolyn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much of an update. We'll have more designations for you at the next meeting in March. One thing that stands out a little bit is we have been working with the owners of the tannery remnants buildings along Forsyth Street. So we've had some very engaging discussion from owners, which is great to see that we're getting lots of feedback and engagement from that community, because again, this one's a little bit different. It's not just one house with one owner. We've got multiple owners, up to 20 property owners along there. So that one is, will take a bit of time and more engagement, but we're moving towards some kind of protection of those remnant walls. So that's something to look forward to coming down the pipes in the future. And that's it for now.
Thank you. I remember Harry telling me, because he was mayor at the time when that development was going in, telling me that he was working with them, and that whole wall, the whole wall on the sidewalk, that's the original wall, and these are the original window openings. So in some units, the wall was kind of a wall for a little courtyard and then access to the house. In others, it was integrated into the house itself. And Harry remembers, because the builder wasn't sure how he was going to deal with that. I said, just leave it there, build around it, build over it. It's the best feature of the development.
It certainly still makes it unique, even if you see any of the properties being sold, which is actually pretty rare apparently, because they don't come up very often, but it's always a selling feature for those properties, certainly.
Yeah, it is. Good, super. Now, can somebody give me a motion, please, to receive the information items? I think Councillor McNeice is anxious to do that. Thank you very much, Jonathan. So the motion is that we receive the information items. Anyone opposed to that? Seeing none, they are received. So the date and time of our next meeting is Tuesday, March the 26th, 2024. It may be virtual, it may not. It depends on the outcome of the discussions and reviews that are taking place right now. There's information on the town's website that you go and look at to see all of that. So I look forward to seeing you all there, either in person or on the screen. If somebody can give me a motion to adjourn, George, thank you very much. George has moved that we adjourn. No one's opposed to that. Thank you, everybody, for the gift of your time today and for so quickly just moving and accepting this change in the format of our meeting this morning. Thank you, everybody. Have a fun day.